Hebrews, Hebrew Israelites scattered abroad and around the world, victims of the transatlantic slave trade, I come unto you in meekness of spirit and with the zeal that the Lord of hosts has placed upon me. If you are awakened to the fact that you are a descendant of the Hebrew Israelites, the 12 tribes of Israel, it is of the utmost importance that you observe this video and rightly divide its content. We as Hebrews know that the curses of Deuteronomy 28 identifies who we are as Israelites, Jacob's children, and that these curses were placed upon us because of our disobedience of the Lord our God. Hebrews, Deuteronomy 28, verses 28 through 29 states, the Lord shall smite thee with madness and blindness and astonishment of heart, and thou shalt grope at noonday as the blind gropeth in darkness, and thou shalt not prosper in thy ways, and thou shalt be only oppressed and spoiled evermore, and no man shall save thee. The Lord mentions that the Israelites would be blind twice in these two verses. He states that they would be like blind folks groping in the darkness, Hebrews. The Lord of hosts asks a question in Isaiah 42, verse 19, which states, who is blind but my servant, or deaf as my messenger that I sent? Who is blind as he that is perfect, and blind as the Lord's servant? The Lord goes on to say in Isaiah 42, verses 23 through 24, that Israel is a people robbed and spoiled. They are all of them snared in holes, and they are hid in prison houses. They are for a prey, and none delivereth, for a spoil, and none saith restore. Who among you will give ear to this? Who will hearken and hear for the time to come? Who gave Jacob for a spoil, and Israel to the robbers? Did not the Lord, he against whom we have sinned? For they would not walk in his ways, neither were they obedient unto his law. Hebrews, I would like to shine a light on Isaiah 42, verse 24, the first part of the verse, which states, who gave Jacob for a spoil, and Israel to the robbers? Hebrews, we know that the Lord of hosts gave Israel up as a spoil because of their disobedience. My question to all Hebrew Israelites scattered abroad is this: who are the robbers in Isaiah 42, verse 24? This question brings me to the topic of this video, Hebrews, the Greek New Testament. In order to answer the above questions, we must go together to the book of Obadiah. Hebrews, the Lord of hosts, poses a question to Israelites concerning these robbers in Obadiah 1, verses 5, which states, if thieves came to thee, if robbers by night, how art thou cut off? Would they not have stolen till they had enough? If grape gatherers came to thee, would they not leave some grapes? The Lord continues on and identifies who the robbers are in verses 6 with a follow-up question. How are the things of Esau searched out? How are his hidden things sought out? Hebrews, I would like to build upon what the Lord of hosts just said by combating it with verses from the few prophets. Isaiah said in Isaiah 66, verse 5, which states and confirms Obadiah 1, verses 13 through 14, that your brethren that hated you, that cast you out for my name's sake, said, let the Lord be glorified, but he shall appear to your joy, and they Esau shall be ashamed. Daniel said in Daniel 11, verses 14, which states, and in those times there shall many stand up against the king of the south. The king of south is Ptolemy of Egypt, Hebrews. Also the robbers of thy people shall exalt themselves to establish division, but they shall fall. Hebrews, Herod the Edomite and some of his kinsmen built a temple, just as Solomon and Zerubbabel did, and it fell in 70 AD by the Romans, just as Daniel had foretold. I would like to inject a footnote here. Can an Edomite build a temple to Yahweh, Hebrews? The answer is no, no, and no. Nehemiah, our forefathers who knew the law and the Tanakh, and Yahweh, the God of the Hebrews, replied unto the Gentiles of his time that the God of heaven, he will prosper us. Therefore, we, his servants, Israel, will arise and build. But ye Gentiles, Greeks and Romans and Edomites and etc. have no portion nor right nor memorial in Jerusalem. Let me repeat that. The Gentiles, the Greeks, the Romans, and the Edomites, and etc., have no portion, nor right, nor memorial in Jerusalem. Ezekiel informs us that Esau stole the land of Canaan from Israel in Ezekiel 35, verses 1 through 15. Hebrews, Ezekiel 35, verse 10 states, because thou hast said, these two nations, these two countries shall be mine, Judah and Israel, and we will possess it, whereas the Lord was there. Hebrews, because of Esau's hatred for Jacob, he performed this wicked act. Ezekiel 35, verses 11 through 13 shines a light on the hatred that Esau has for his brother, Jacob. Ezekiel 35, verses 11 through 13 states, therefore, as I live, saith the Lord God, I will even do according to thine anger and according to thine envy, which thou hast used out of thy hatred against Israel, and I will make myself known among them when I have judged thee. And thou shalt know that I am the Lord, and that I have heard all the blasphemies which thou hast spoken against the mountains of Israel, saying, they are laid desolate, they are given us to consume. Thus with your mouth ye have boasted against me, and have multiplied your words against me. I have heard them. My fellow Hebrew Israelites, Psalms 83 informs us that Israel's enemies made a tumult, and they that hated thee have lifted up their head. They have taken crafty counsel against thy people, and consulted against thy hidden ones. They have said, come, let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance. Hebrews, Psalms 83, verses 6, gives us the names of the nations that conspired against us, to cause us to be blind and deaf and not know our culture, and especially our God unto this day. The nations are as follows: the tabernacle of Edom, the ringleader, the Ishmaelites, Moab, the Hagarenes, Gebal, Ammon, Amalek, Philistines, the inhabitants of Tyre, Asher, and the children of Lot. Hebrews, we know now that Esau and the Edomites are the robbers of Israel, Judah. The Lord pronounced judgment on Edom in verses 7 through 9 because of what he did to Israel in Obadiah 1, verses 10 through 14, which states, for thy violence against thy brother, shame shall cover thee, and thou shalt be cut off forever. In the day that thou stoodest on the other side, in the day that strangers carried away captive his forces, and foreigners entered into his gates, and cast lots upon Jerusalem, even thou was one of them. But thou shouldst not have looked on the day of thy brother, in the day that he became a stranger. Neither should thou have rejoiced over the children of Judah in the day of their destruction. Neither should thou have spoken proudly in the day of their distress. Thou shouldst not have entered into the gates of my people in the day of their calamity. Yea, thou shouldst not have looked on their affliction in the day of their calamity, nor have laid hands on their substance in the day of their calamity. Neither should they have stood in the crosshairs to cut off those of his that did escape. Neither should thou have delivered up those of his that did remain in the day of their distress. Hebrews, the Edomites performed this unlawful act during the time of 143 BC, when Antiochus Epiphanes invaded Judah. I would like to inform you at this juncture to watch my videos, part 1 and 2. Israel was not destroyed in 70 AD. Every time Israel goes into captivity, the Lord leaves a remnant in the land, those that did escape, in order that Israel may return to their homeland. In this particular calamity, Esau, the Edomites, stepped in and delivered up the remnant in order that they may possess the land. They stole the land of Israel by lot, the 12 lots of land that were given to the 12 sons of Jacob. Esau occupied the land and assumed the names of the 12 tribes of Israel. The Greeks, along with Esau, drove the Israelites out. The Israelites resettled on the west coast of Africa from 143 BC until the transatlantic slave trade began in the 1600s, and Deuteronomy 28 overcame them. Hebrews, The Edomites dwelled in the land of Israel, Canaan, from 143 BC to 70 AD when the Romans drove them out of the land of Israel. Hebrews, in order to understand why Esau hates his brother Jacob so much, we must go back to the beginning where it all started. Rebekah, Isaac's wife, gave birth to twin boys. The children struggled together in their mother's womb. Esau came forth first, the firstborn, and Jacob came after, and his hand took a hold of Esau's heel. Genesis 25, verses 22 through 26. Esau despised his birthright and sold his birthright unto Jacob for bread and a pottage of lentils. Genesis 25, verses 29 through 34. Jacob obtains Esau's blessing from Isaac at Isaac's death, and Esau hated Jacob because of the blessing wherewith his father blessed him. And Esau said in his heart, the days of mourning for my father are at hand. Then will I slay my brother Jacob. This all happened in Genesis 27, and this is where all the hatred started, Hebrews. Joseph became the second in charge in the land of Egypt. Therefore Jacob and all his sons dwelled in the land of Egypt, Goshen, Hebrews. Jacob dies in the land of Egypt, and all the servants of Pharaoh, and all the elders of his house, and all the elders of the land of Egypt went up with Joseph, and they went to bury Jacob in the land of Canaan. And a report reached Esau, saying Jacob died in Egypt, and his sons and all of Egypt are conveying him to the land of Canaan to bury him. And Joseph and his brethren brought their father, Jacob, from Egypt, and went to Hebron to bury Jacob in the cave by his forefathers. They came unto the cave in the land of Canaan, and as they came, Esau stood with his sons against Joseph and his brethren as a hindrance in the cave, saying, Jacob shall not be buried therein, for it belongeth unto us and to our forefathers. Hebrews, a battle broke out, and the battle was very heavy between them. And the sons of Esau were smitten before the sons of Jacob. And the sons of Jacob slew the sons of Esau, 80 men. And not one died of the people of the sons of Jacob. And the hand of Joseph prevailed over all the people of the sons of Esau. Esau was killed in the battle. And Zephno, the son of Eliphaz, the son of Esau, was bound in chains of iron. And Joseph's servants brought him captive to Egypt. The children of Esau tried on several occasions to smite Israel and the Egyptians and free Zephno from Joseph's hands, but could not prevail, Hebrews. Joseph ordered Zephno and his men to be additionally bound, and they bound them in iron, and they increased their griefs. Jasher, chapter 56 through 59. Hebrews. After the death of Joseph, Zephno, the son of Eliphaz, the son of Esau, fled from Egypt, he and his men, and they went away. Zephno became king over the children of Chechem. The children of Chechem are of the lineage of Japhet. Genesis 10, verse 4. Cain's lineage. Hebrews, I advise you to watch my video. Ham and Japhet is not Noah's son. The children of Chechem are out of the lineage of Japhet. Genesis 10, verse 4. Zephno subdued and ruled over them. Zephno begot Janus, who succeeded him. Janus begot Philip, who succeeded him. And Philip begot Alexander the Greek, who ruled the children of Chechem after him. Joshua 67, verse 5. Hebrews. This was all prophesied by Daniel in the book of Daniel, chapter 8. The vision of the ram and the he-goat. Daniel prophesied that the Greeks would overcome the Medes and Persians, the second beast, and become the third beast of Daniel 7, verse 6. Daniel had a vision in verses 1 through 14 and received the interpretation in verses 15 through 27 of chapter 8. Gabriel told Daniel that Alexander the Greek would come. In the first king of Daniel 8, verse 21, he informed Daniel that Alexander would fall sick and die and divide his kingdom up in 4 ways. Daniel 8, verse 22. He further informed Daniel that a wicked and fierce king would stand up at the end of the third beast, and he would destroy Israel as a nation. He would through many policies caused craft to prosper in his hands and magnify himself in his heart. Daniel 8, verses 23 through 25. Hebrews. This prophecy never came to pass in the King James Bible because it was taken out and hidden from the reader by the powers that be. The powers that be, Hebrews, are the early church fathers. They are Edomites, cross-bred, Hellenized Jews posing as Hebrew Israelites. These are the wicked scribes of antiquity. The list includes such notables as Clement of Alexandria, Ignatius, Polycarp, Justin Martyr, Irenaeus, Cyprian, Athanasius, Basil, Cyril of Jerusalem, Ambrose, Jerome, Augustine, Cyrene of Alexandria, Pope Leo of the Greek, and Pope Gregory the Greek. We as Hebrew Israelites have to go together to the apocryphal books, Hebrews. We must go to 1 Maccabees chapter 1, verse 1, and we see that Alexander the Greek, the son of Philip, indeed came from the land of Checham and defeated Darius of the Medes and Persians. He reigned for 12 years and died. He also divided his kingdom into 4 parts. And after Alexander had reigned, then his officers began to rule, each in his own place. They all put on crowns after his death, and so did their descendants after them for many years. And they caused many evils on the earth. At the latter end of the Greek kingdom, just as Gabriel and Daniel had foretold, a king of fierce countenance stood up. This being Antiochus Epiphanes, the prince that shall come in Daniel 9, verses 26 through 27. He began to reign in 137 BC over the Greek kingdom, the third beast. After subduing Egypt, king of the south, Antiochus returned in the 143rd year. He went up against Israel and came to Jerusalem with a strong force. He destroyed the sanctuary and shed much blood and spoke with great arrogance. He defiled the sanctuary and the priests and sacrificed swine and other unclean animals on the altar. Jerusalem was uninhabited, like a wilderness. Not one of her children went in or out. It was a lodging place for the Gentiles. Joy was taken from Jacob because of them. The residents of Jerusalem fled, and she became a dwelling place of strangers. She became strange to her offspring, and her children forsook her. A force was sent to wipe out and destroy the strength of Israel and the remnant of Jerusalem. They were to banish the memory of Israel from the place and settle aliens, strangers in all their territories and distribute their land by lot, just as Obadiah had prophesied. He authorized Israelites to observe the ordinances of the Gentiles, so they built a gymnasium in Jerusalem, according to the Gentile custom, and removed the marks of circumcision and abandoned the Holy Covenant. Hebrews, in 1 Maccabees chapter 1, verse 54, these Edomites and Gentiles erected a desolating sacrilege on the altar of burnt offerings. They also built altars in the surrounding towns of Judah and offered incense at the doors of the houses in the streets. Hebrews, these Edomites and Gentiles burned the books of the law, the Tanakh, which they found with fire. They tore these books into pieces, and anyone found possessing the books of the law was condemned to death by the decree of Antiochus. Let me repeat that. Hebrews, these Edomites and Gentiles, burned the books of the law, the Tanakh, which they found with fire. They tore these books into pieces, and anyone found possessing the book of the law was condemned to death by the decree of Antiochus. These Edomites and Gentiles hated the Israelites. They hated the book of the law. They hated the Tanakh, the Old Testament, and they hated Yahweh, the God of Israel. Later, Hebrews, when the Romans, the fourth beast, came on the scene, many of these Edomites, Hellenized Jews, and Gentiles settled in Alexandria, Egypt. They spoke Greek. Therefore, they demanded a copy of the Old Testament be written in Greek, which is how the Septuagint came about. These Edomites, such as Philo of Alexandria, Pliny the Elder, Cyril of Alexandria, and Josephus, and many, many other Hellenized Jews began to write books, plagiarized from our forefathers, the prophet scriptures, and the so-called Old Testament. They plagiarized the books and subscribed their names to them. These books, written by the Edomites, Jews, has nothing to do with the Old Testament. They have nothing to do with the God of the Old Testament. The Greeks and the Romans are Gentiles. The third and fourth beast of Daniel, chapter 7. They are controlled by the Edomite, the Hellenized Jews, Hebrews. Hebrews. In the meantime, the Israelites are on the west coast of Africa, where they have been since 143 BC. But before they left the land of Israel, the books of the Old Testament was finalized in Malachi 4, verse 16, which states, "Then they that feared the Lord spoke often one to another, and the Lord hearkened and heard it, and the book of remembrance was written before them, before him, for them that feared the Lord, and that thought upon his name." The Lord told that in the book of Daniel to seal up the book of remembrance, until the time of the end. Hebrews, Daniel 12, verse 9. Hebrews, if the Tanakh, the Old Testament, was closed up and sealed until the time of the end, tell me, Hebrews, how did we as Israelites get the New Testament? We received the Greek New Testament at the Council of Nicaea in 135 AD, when Constantine, a Gentile, and Ebus of Caesarea, an Edomite, brought about the New Testament. Ebus presided over the council and compiled and canonized all the books that the Edomites had written from 143 BC to 325 AD. The Edomites, the Greeks, and the Romans all hated the law and the Tanakh up until this point. But now, because of the misfortunes of the Roman Empire, Constantine, being the sole ruler of Rome, again needed the Tanakh in order that he may create a new religion, the Holy Roman Empire. He compiled the Greek literature together along with Ebus, the Edomite, and formed the New Testament. Constantine and these Edomites then combined the two books, the Tanakh and the New Testament, and called it the Bible, Hebrews. There are Edomites, Romans, and Gentiles scattered all through the New Testament, the Greek New Testament. The Tanakh, the Old Testament, is written in Hebrew, whereas the Greek New Testament was written in Greek. It was never written in Hebrew. It was conceived in Greek and written in Greek, Hebrews. The Tanakh is our holy scriptures, written by the prophets of Israel. The Greek New Testament is a book plagiarized and compiled by the Edomites, posing as Israelites. It is nothing holy about the New Testament, Hebrews. The Lord of hosts, through Moses, prophesied this very thing unto our forefathers, which is one of the curses of Deuteronomy 28. Deuteronomy 28 states, "And the Lord shall scatter them all among all people, from one end of the earth even unto the other, and there thou shalt serve other gods, which neither thou nor thy fathers have known, even wood and stone." Hebrews, Obadiah informs us as Israelites that Edom sent an ambassador among the heathen, the Gentiles, and they became one people. Esau and Japheth became as one nation until this day. Remember Zephno, Hebrews, how he unified the Edomites and the Gentiles. Chechem, Hebrews. Genesis 10, verse 2. Japheth has a son called Ashkenazi. This is where you get the Ashkenazi Jew of today. Genesis 10, verse 4. Japheth has a son called Tarsus, Hebrews. Paul, who wrote most of the Greek New Testament, homeland is in Tarsus. Paul of Tarsus, Hebrews. Let that sink in. Paul is a Gentile, according to Genesis 10, verse 4 and 5. The children of Chechem and the children of Tarsus are Gentiles. They are out of the lineage of Japheth, Cain's lineage, Hebrews. The book of Jubilees, chapter 24, verse 29, is a witness to this very fact. It states, "From the mouth of Isaac, whoever escapes the sword of the enemy, Chechem, may the righteous nation root them out in judgment from under heaven. They, Chechem, shall be the enemy, and the foe of my children Israel throughout their generations on the earth. Let me repeat that. It states, from the mouth of Isaac, whoever escapes the sword of the enemy, Chechem, may the righteous nation root them out in judgment from under heaven. They, Chechem, the Gentiles, shall be the enemy and the foe of my children Israel throughout their generations on the earth. In Jubilees 30, verse 7, Jacob proclaims to his 12 sons this: if there is any man in Israel who wishes to give his daughter or his sister to any man who is of the offspring of the Gentiles, he shall surely die. They shall stone him, for he has committed shame in Israel. They shall burn the woman with fire, because she has dishonored the name of the house of her father, and she shall be rooted out of Israel. There is no remission, and there is no atonement for the sin, Hebrews. Moses commanded the children of Israel and exhorted them not to give their daughters to the Gentiles, and not to take for their sons any of the daughters of the Gentiles, for this is abomination before the Lord, Hebrews. To sum everything up, and to bring forth truth and righteousness, let us together rightly divide the above information, Hebrews. Why do we, as Hebrews, disannul the Old Testament and show favor to the New Testament? Hebrews, we do this very thing because the Gentiles and the Edomites hate the law and have imposed their ideologies upon us, just as Moses, through the Lord of hosts, prophesied that it would happen. Deuteronomy 32, verses 17. They sacrifice unto devils, not to God, the gods whom they knew not, the new gods that newly came up, whom their fathers feared not. Hebrews, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Moses, Isaiah, Ezekiel, Zechariah and Haggai, and Malachi did not know the God of the New Testament. If our fathers proclaim that the Gentiles are our enemies, Hebrews, how can they be grafted in, according to Paul and the Greek New Testament? Hebrews, the powers that be, the wicked scribes, took out Zerubbabel's temple and played up Herod's temple, which was not sanctioned by Yahweh, in order to cover over the true history of Esau, the Edomites, and Japhet, the Gentiles. Because of this dilemma, we as Hebrew Israelites have fumbled with the Tanakh for thousands of years. Hebrews, it is high time we get back around to thinking like a Hebrew. In order for us as Hebrew Israelites to return unto the Lord God, the Lord of hosts, we must give up the ideologies of Esau written in the Greek New Testament. Hebrews, I have been sent to inform and enlighten you, whether you hear or forbear, it is upon you. The King James Bible is two books rolled in one. The Old Testament and the Greek New Testament are two different books. The Israelites, our forefathers, wrote the Old Testament, the Tanakh, in the Hebrew language, and the Edomites and the Gentiles, our enemies, Israel's enemies, wrote the Greek New Testament. The Old Testament, the Old is holy, and the New is plagiarized. There are two different gods in the Bible, the one in the Old Testament and the other in the New Testament. The Lord of hosts, the God of the Tanakh, the Old Testament says, search the Tanakh in the last days and find them, Hebrews. Isaiah tells us in Isaiah 29, verses 18, that on that day, the deaf will hear the words of the scrolls, and out of deep darkness, the eyes of the blind will see. Hebrews, I hope that this video enlightened and informed you. And may the Lord of hosts protect and keep all Hebrew Israelites until our soon regathering. Shalom. Shalom. Shalom, Hebrews.